Title: The Cold CEO and the Shy Secretary. Vlad Dracul was a man of many secrets. As the CEO of Dracul Enterprises, one of the most powerful companies in the world, he had a reputation for being cold, calculating, and nearly impossible to please. His employees feared him, and those who dared to work closely with him rarely lasted more than a few weeks. Whispers around the office suggested that he had fired every secretary he'd ever had, usually within days of them starting, simply because he couldn't tolerate their nervousness or, worse, their fear of him. But Vlad wasn't just any man, he was a vampire. Born centuries ago, he had lived through ages, accumulating wealth and power beyond imagination. Yet, despite all his successes, Vlad found himself isolated. He had grown tired of the monotony of human life, frustrated with their weakness and lack of courage. He craved something different, something that would challenge him. Enter Emily Clark, a shy but beautiful young woman from a small town far from the bustling city. Emily had been struggling to make ends meet, supporting her ailing mother and younger brother after their father had passed away. When she landed the job as Vlad's new secretary, she knew it was her chance to make a difference in her family's life. She couldn't afford to lose this job, no matter how intimidating her boss might be. Emily had heard all the rumors about Vlad Dracul, about his stern demeanor and his habit of firing secretaries without a second thought. She knew that if she wanted to keep this job, she would have to be different, she would have to be brave. And so, every morning, she steeled herself, walking into the imposing skyscraper of Dracul Enterprises with her head held high, determined not to let fear show. For weeks, she worked diligently, doing everything she could to meet Vlad's high expectations. She quickly learned his routines, anticipated his needs, and even began to decipher his cryptic mood swings. Despite his cold exterior, she noticed little things about him that others missed: a fleeting smile when he accomplished something particularly challenging, a slight softening of his gaze when he looked out over the city from his office window. She couldn't understand why everyone was so afraid of him. Yes, he was demanding and stern, but Emily saw something else in him, something sad and lonely. Vlad, on the other hand, was intrigued by his new secretary. Unlike the others before her, Emily wasn't afraid of him. She didn't tremble when he spoke to her, didn't shy away from his gaze, and she performed her duties with a quiet grace that impressed him. There was something about her, a strength hidden beneath her shy exterior, a resolve that matched his own. He found himself watching her more and more, curious about what made her different from the others. Then came the night of the annual company gala, a grand event held in one of the city's most luxurious hotels. It was a chance for the company to celebrate its successes, and Vlad, despite his usual aversion to social gatherings, was expected to attend. Emily had been invited as well, much to her surprise. She had never been to a function like this before and felt out of place among the city's elite. Upon arrival, Emily was ushered into a dressing room filled with an array of glamorous gowns provided for the event. She had never seen so many beautiful dresses in her life. As she sifted through them, her fingers stopped on a stunning deep red gown. It was unlike anything she had ever worn, elegant, form-fitting, with a neckline that was daring but not overdone. Hesitantly, she tried it on and couldn't believe the transformation when she looked in the mirror. The dress clung to her curves, highlighting her figure in a way that she had never seen before. For the first time in her life, Emily felt beautiful, truly beautiful. Gathering her courage, she stepped out of the dressing room and into the grand ballroom. The moment she entered, the room fell silent. Heads turned, conversation stopped, and every eye was on her. Emily blushed deeply and used to such attention, but she held her head high, remembering why she was there. Her eyes searched for Vlad, hoping for a sign of approval, but she found something else in his gaze, something that made her heart race. Then came the night of the annual company gala, a grand event held in one of the city's most luxurious hotels. It was a chance for the company to celebrate its successes, and Vlad, despite his usual aversion to social gatherings, was expected to attend. Emily had been invited as well, much to her surprise. She had never been to a function like this before and felt out of place among the city's elite. Upon arrival, Emily was ushered into a dressing room filled with an array of glamorous gowns provided for the event. She had never seen so many beautiful dresses in her life. As she sifted through them, her fingers stopped on a stunning deep red gown. It was unlike anything she had ever worn, elegant, form-fitting, with a neckline that was daring but not overdone. Hesitantly, she tried it on and couldn't believe the transformation when she looked in the mirror. The dress clung to her curves, highlighting her figure in a way that she had never seen before. For the first time in her life, Emily felt beautiful, truly beautiful. Gathering her courage, she stepped out of the dressing room and into the grand ballroom. The moment she entered, the room fell silent. Heads turned, conversation stopped, and every eye was on her. Emily blushed deeply and used to such attention, but she held her head high, remembering why she was there. Her eyes searched for Vlad, hoping for a sign of approval, but she found something else in his gaze, something that made her heart race. Vlad had been standing at the edge of the room, observing the crowd with his usual detached demeanor, when Emily walked in. His breath caught in his throat as he saw her. She was radiant, her beauty striking in the elegant gown, and for the first time in centuries, he felt something stir in his chest, a sensation he had long thought dead. He couldn't take his eyes off her as she made her way through the crowd. There was something magnetic about her, something that drew him in and made him want to be closer. He found himself moving toward her, unable to resist the pull. "Emily," he said softly as he approached, his voice barely more than a whisper. She looked up at him, her eyes wide with surprise. "Mr. Drackle," she replied, her voice shaking slightly. "Is everything okay?" He nodded, his gaze never leaving hers. "You look stunning," he said, his voice low and husky. Emily blushed deeper, her heart pounding in her chest. "Thank you," she murmured, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and excitement. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the world around them fading away as they lost themselves in each other's gaze. Then, without a word, Vlad took her hand and led her out of the ballroom, down a quiet hallway, and into a private room. The room was dimly lit, casting soft shadows across the walls. Vlad turned to face her, his eyes dark with desire. "Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I don't know what it is about you, but I can't seem to stay away." Emily's breath hitched, her heart racing. "I feel the same," she confessed, her voice barely more than a whisper. Before she could say anything else, Vlad closed the distance between them, his lips capturing hers in a fierce, passionate kiss. Emily gasped, her hands flying up to his chest as he pulled her closer, deepening the kiss. She had never felt anything like this before, a burning need that consumed her, leaving her breathless and wanting more. As their lips moved together, Vlad's hands roamed down her back, pulling her even closer. Emily's fingers tangled in his hair, her body pressing against his as she lost herself in the sensation. She could feel the coolness of his skin through the thin fabric of her dress, a stark contrast to the heat that radiated from her own. Without breaking the kiss, Vlad guided her toward a nearby couch, his movements slow and deliberate. He laid her down gently, his hands never leaving her body as he continued to kiss her with a fervor that left her dizzy. Emily moaned softly as his lips moved down to her neck, his fangs grazing her skin in a way that sent shivers down her spine. She had heard the rumors about him, about what he was, but in that moment, she didn't care. All she cared about was the way he made her feel, the way he made her heart race and her body ache with desire. Vlad's hand slid down to the hem of her dress, lifting it slowly as his lips continued their journey down her neck. Emily's breath hitched, her body arching up toward him in response. She had never been with anyone before, and the anticipation was almost too much to bear. "Are you sure about this?" Vlad asked, his voice rough with need as he paused to look into her eyes. Emily nodded, her eyes fluttering open to meet his. "Yes," she whispered, her voice trembling with desire. "I'm sure." With that, Vlad's lips returned to her neck, his fangs grazing her skin as he kissed her hungrily. Emily's hands clutched at his shoulders, her body trembling with anticipation as he continued to explore her with his mouth and hands. The night passed in a blur of passion and heat, their bodies moving together in perfect harmony. Emily had never felt anything like it before, and she was overwhelmed by the intensity of it all. Vlad was gentle yet possessive, his touch both tender and demanding, and she found herself giving in to him completely, surrendering to the pleasure that coursed through her veins. As dawn began to break, they finally collapsed onto the couch, their bodies spent and sated. Emily curled up against Vlad, her head resting on his chest as she listened to the steady beat of his heart, a sound she had never expected to hear from a vampire. For the first time in his long life, Vlad felt truly content. Emily had brought something into his life that he hadn't even known he was missing, a warmth, a light that chased away the darkness he had lived in for so long. He knew, in that moment, that he would do anything to keep her by his side, to protect her from the world and himself. But as he lay there, holding Emily close, Vlad's mind began to race with fear and doubt. He knew that his family would never accept her, especially his mother, who despised humans more than anyone. They had always hated humans, viewing them as inferior and weak. His last wife, also a human, had been killed by one of his enemies, and Vlad feared the same fate would befall Emily if she remained human.